Okay. Bork, bork. Bork, bork, bork. It's my talent. I get to stand in front of people and make very random noises. Bork, bork. Telling stories about scabs and girlfriends' mouths. Yeah. Take some notes. Are we good?
Yeah, you're good to go in like about 5 seconds.
Okay. Not at the moment. Man, I get a lot of my own voice in this little room. It's kind of cool. That was 2 years ago. Sorry. There's a bounty on the bottom of my firewall shirt, so see me afterwards. Anyway, I'll get on with this because it's a small room and it's hot in here. My name is Bruce Potter. I'm going to talk about the dirty secrets of information security, basically the 800-pound gorillas that are all in the room, but we don't want to talk about. How many people in here actually deal with information security or care about information security in some way, shape, or form? Okay, good, because if not, you're on the wrong flight. But it's, you come to a thing like Notacon where we got art and technology and all these other things, and I could get up here and spout about information security. People would be like, that guy was a jackass. He didn't say anything of value at all. There was no art whatsoever. I made this, by the way. This is mine, and it turns out when I load this background onto PowerPoint on a Mac, it gives me about 4 seconds of latency from the point when I hit the space bar till when it can render the next slide. I've obviously done something wrong. It's a standard JPEG, but it still gets really pissed off. So I'll hit space. We'll wait. There we go. So Macs are really quick, except when they're running Microsoft products. The jokes will get better as I get warmed up, kind of loosening up a bit here. First thing I always open my talks with, don't believe anything I'm about to tell you. Don't believe anything you hear at Notacon, especially the stuff that Froggy tells you. We're information security professionals, right? I mean, that's what a lot of us get paid for or we care about. And in general, we get paid to be cynical. So when you come here and you get really drunk and you smoke a lot of cigarettes and things, it still doesn't do away with your pressing need to be a cynical person. So I found this quote at a liquor store, of all places, which the punchline, of course, is that's where everyone goes to find religion. And anyway, it speaks for itself. But I encourage you to please challenge what I'm about to tell you. By day, I'm a dirty consultant. And deal with wireless security, application assurance, that kind of thing. At night, I'm the founder of the Shmoo Group. I help with ShmooCon a little bit. Heidi really does a lot of the heavy lifting with the rest of the core group. I just sit around and look pretty. And normally I ask if anyone knows what a Volvo 1800 is. Turns out there's at least one person here that does, and has restored 2 of them. Does anyone else actually know what a Volvo 1800 is? The Saint drove it, yes. In the original TV show, The Saint, Roger Moore drove a Volvo 1800. And it's a little 2+2 sports car that Volvo made, and I wanted it since I was 15, and I bought it when I was 30. Note, the car actually hadn't moved in those 15 years, and was cohabitating with cattle for a while. So it is in as glamorous shape as that would sound. When you sit there and listen at night quietly, you can actually hear the rust fall off the car. So this is a way to kind of talk about security. It really doesn't have anything to do with the rest of my talk. A lot of the slides in this talk have nothing to do with each other, and I kind of just will ramble through them, and we can just nod and pretend that they actually have some bearing. I made some of them last night. I made some of them this morning. They're actually not numbered in sequential order, so we'll just all play along. IT security needs pyramid. When we talk about security, it's fantastic that we can get we can be zealots. Right? We can get all like, thou shalt have to do the following stuff in order to be secure. And it's like, thou shalt run Linux, thou shalt run Apple. I mean, we're zealots. We like to be very black and white about things. But it turns out security, unlike operating systems, is not a black and white decision. Wow. No Mac fans in the room. That should be abundantly obvious to all the Mac people. Like, there's only one true OS, and it's OS 10, and the rest of you people are all heathens. So when we talk about security, we got to talk about, Maslow talks about the human needs pyramid, right? Like, unless we have food and water taken care of, we don't really care about who to vote for president next, right? I mean, this is pretty standard fare. I contend if you're not doing your core operational security stuff, you're not patching your boxes, you don't have configuration management and operational procedures in place, your IDS can suck wind all day long and it makes no difference, right? IDS is maybe sexy, just like talking about politics is kind of fun, but it doesn't matter if you're not doing the rest of this. So this pyramid kind of gives us a way to frame discussions of security. And I'm kind of a big believer in this. I've worked in shops where we did this bottom stuff real well. It was bread and butter, and we gave the middle finger to the rest of this stuff. We never got owned. Okay, we were running really crazy crap, lots of custom code, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, we paid attention to the bread and butter basics, and it worked out real well. If you do this, and this is not 100%, right? You don't need to do everything under the sun with respect to patch management, for instance, to start caring about firewalls. That's folly. But you do have to do it, to the 80% line. Similarly, if we do firewalls, that's network security, right? It's what we've been doing for years. And then we talk about AAA services, authentication, authorization, and auditing. So that's kind of your next level. You get up a level, now we got a better understanding of our enterprise, okay? We have a better understanding of the systems we're trying to secure. Down here, like this applies, this is motherhood and apple pie, right? Like I can patch all the Windows boxes, hallelujah. Up here, well, now I'm gonna start talking about software security and auditing code. Okay, that's spendy. That requires a great deal of understanding of what the hell it is I'm trying to do, the code that I've written, how it interacts. When I say ACL here, I don't mean firewall and network level ACLs. What I'm talking about are software security mechanisms that will prevent software from doing stupid crap even after I wrote it. Okay, it's one thing to have good software that behaves. It's another thing to control bad software that's misbehaving, right? And they both have kind of the same idea, just achieved in a different way. The idea here with these software ACLs is at the extreme end, you got something like SE Linux. How many people have written an SE Linux policy? One. How many people have turned SE Linux off on Fedora Core? Okay, a few more. That's normally the answer. It's a frickin' battleship, right? Like it is impossible. I like to the analogy I like to make really crappy analogies. This crappy analogy is like taking a strategic bomber to go get the groceries. Like it holds a lot of fucking groceries and it gets there really damn fast. But it's kind of a pain to take off and land. So whether or not it's useful, it's hard to say. There's a product from used to be Immunix. I always forget the name. AppArmor. That's a part of SUSE Linux, and it allows you to control the execution of a piece of software, like say Apache, in order to prevent it from doing bad things. One of the guys who's involved in this particular program called me up one day and said, "Hey, I'm trying to prove a point." I'm like, "Okay, give me more information." He had a world readable file in Etsy, and he gave me a login on a box. And he said, "I want you to log in. I want you to tell me the contents of the file." Sure. What am I missing? He's like, "Well, I've app-armored it, so Bash can't see that file." Okay. So I log in with Bash, cat the file, permission denied. Neat. That's fun. I figure that's cute. I'll walk my way around this somehow, and I'll read this file. 2 days later, after I've attacked this box in every heinous way known to mankind, and I still can't get to the file, and now I have root access, by the way. It's like, I'm feeling my manhood slip away through the tubes, and it was pretty impressive. And so I was like, "Hey, that's neat." I'm at a conference with this guy a couple weeks later. I'm like, "Tell me more about this." I'm like, "It can't be that easy to do for something like Apache." And one night, it's midnight, we're all pretty drunk, and we sit down and we app-armor Apache. And then there's known buffer overflow problems and stuff, and we tried to break Apache and get in the box and do malicious stuff, and we couldn't. Like, oh, wow, that is really freaking cool. We were loaded, blitzed, and Apache still works, the website's still up. I've compromised the process technically, but I can't do anything malicious. Oh. So that was pretty neat. And I'm not here to endorse AppArmor, but there are classes of technology out there that allow us to secure systems as long as we have a better understanding of what it is we're trying to do. So that's software security. Move up. We can talk about IDS. If you're really bored, you can run an IDS. But they're best used for policy enforcement, frankly. I apologize if there's any IDS zealots in the audience. And honeypots are just a colossal waste of time unless you're an academic, and then you can write theses about what all the attackers are doing while they're owning your honeypot. So I owned you. Wow, that's an eye chart from the back, isn't it? I'm just gonna read you the salient bits here. This is from an Air Force study in 1972, okay? In addition to the experience of accidental disclosure, there's also been a number of successful penetrations of systems where security was added on or claimed from fixing all known bugs in the operating system. The success of the penetrations, for the most part, has resulted from the inability of the system to adequately isolate the malicious user and from inadequate access control mechanisms built into the operating system. 1972. So for those that can do the math, that's 35 years ago. It's the same problem today, right? If the Air Force were to write another study today, they could cut and paste, and some government contractor would get a lot of money. But that's frightening, right? Like, that is goddamn frightening. I got quoted saying goddamn by Wired or someone at Black Hat talking about this problem, and then they put it together with my employer, and then I got in the same sentence. So my employer sent me a nasty gram. Please try not to swear anymore. Fuck you. Stick it to the man. So the deal is, as we're solving problems, the attackers are also solving their own problems, and they're getting better at solving things. And people will argue this graph, and what they usually argue is that the total problem is actually getting bigger at a rate faster than which we're solving things. Not a good situation to be in. Systems are more connected, they're more complex, there's more of them. This is always going to be the case. Moore's law may die at some point, but that's not going to stop the fact that eventually one day my doorbell is going to be able to communicate with my cell phone and a little camera above my door, and I'll be able in real time see who's at my front door when I'm 1,000 miles away, right? And that's going to be a real hackable system. And one day someone's going to be at my door and it's going to be a little Walmart smiley face, and there's going to be a bunch of people walking around with all this shit taken out of my house while I see is a big Walmart smiley face. You've been owned. So anyway, what we need to do, for those of us on the defensive side of the world, we need to make step functions here. Like, we need to make big leaps forward in capability in order to catch up on the attackers. So let's talk about what the state of things look like. InfoSec, when we think security, we think I'm going to buy antivirus, I'm going to buy intrusion detection, and I'm going to have strong passwords. Okay, this is the universe of security. We talk about defense in depth, right? Firewalls and antivirus and router ACLs and this layers and layers and layers. Well, so we do understand that the premise here is, well, everything is so crappy that eventually something will be not crappy enough to catch the bad guys. Like, that's the core premise. Like, something will overcome that hurdle of being crap to declare itself secure enough to stop some bad guy. Okay, that's what defense in depth means. Okay, and the more products we layer on in this layered idea, the more we just buy into this mindset of, oh, another pile of poo. Rub it on, stack it up, we're done. This is being videotaped. This is fantastic. I've already pulled poo out of my rear. Is this a good idea? Microsoft is the root of all security evils. Big evil Microsoft. Is that really the case? Is that really what? Are we all worried about Microsoft anymore? Good, we're starting to get a little enlightened. We'll get to that later too. These are all like setting up, this is foreshadowing for those of you in the literary realm. This is an artistic thing, so these are all foreshadowing bullet points. Script kiddies that have more guts than brains, is this still the case? Probably not. All the ideas that we have and we deploy today, the products we buy, are geared for the threat model that we had 10 years ago, right? We are, back here behind this curve, over here somewhere, solving problems that existed, back here, right? I mean, that's one way to interpret this graph. We're finally solving problems on the intersection, on the x, same x value or y value that we have back in the past. And so you could probably even draw this realistically. You could do a study and say, how far back in time do we have to go to figure out what problem we just solved, okay? Steve Bellevin has a fantastic quote. A firewall is a network response to a software engineering problem. Turns out we haven't solved the software engineering problem yet, so we keep having to make smarter firewalls. So the security community is an interesting animal. We're a little stinky sometimes a little drunk. But my wife was so offended she had to leave. It was the poo, yes, it was the poo. Save your seat. Check. Over the last 15 years, we've had quite a discourse on what disclosure of security vulnerabilities means, right? Like, what does it mean to disclose a vulnerability in a responsible manner? If I'm a security reacher and I find something, 15 years ago, I could probably just post an email message, that's what they call them, to some list somewhere, and be like, oh, I found this vulnerability. And everyone would go, oh, neat. And only like 8 people read the info because nobody cared about security, and maybe the vendor got informed, and maybe they fixed it, and there was no bad worms or anything that came out of it. But over time, security became more and more critical. Internet came along, the first .com came on the internet, people started selling stuff, everybody started to care about security a lot more. And then maybe disclosing that vulnerability information just right there out in the open wasn't the best idea. So, hey, I'll work with a vendor. 1997, a lot of vendors just didn't care about security, right? Wasn't a discriminator from a product perspective. They weren't getting burned from a compliance perspective. Hey, thanks, you little black t-shirt wearing security researcher. I'm going to sue your ass for telling me this. Oh, hey, guy. We're all friends here. There's no need to fight. Eventually, the vendors started to participate more. There was this thing called the RF policy, Rainforest Puppy Releases Policy on Responsible Disclosure. It's like 2 pages long. Basically, it says use your frickin' brain, right? If it's a big frickin' problem and it's going to cause chaos, try to work with the vendor. If the vendor's not responsive, kick him in the butt. And if they're not responsive, release the information to the public. I've summarized the RF policy in 2 sentences. Okay? Microsoft and AtStake and a bunch of other people got together a few years later because Microsoft wanted to push the responsibility disclosure discussion a notch. And they came up with the Organization for Internet Safety, which released a 70-page guideline on vulnerability disclosure, which had things like party of the third in it. Okay? So this hacker's reading this thing, says party of the first will notify party of the third within a timely manner according to party of the second. All right, I'm just going to announce it. And ooh, there you go. So we got in this huge discussion of responsible disclosure. Magical things happened, okay? People started paying a lot of money for information about these vulnerabilities, right? EI, Tipping Point, that's the other one. Other people started having these vulnerability disclosure programs where you could tell them information about vulnerabilities and they would pay you for it. Completely open market. Neat. And we're not saying paying like $50, $5,000, $10,000. Hey, and if you keep telling us about them, we'll give you more money every time. We'll give you bonus points. We'll give you varsity jackets. We'll give you trips to Black Hat. Not making it up. They have frequent vulnerability disclosure programs. Literally one of them, you can get a varsity jacket. I'm Leet or something on the back, so all your friends can mock you while you're walking away. But this scares the bejesus out of me, right? Who knows what these people are doing to these vulnerabilities? Tipping Point, everybody, like I've talked to the guys, and they're like, oh, we're being totally responsible. You can trust us. I'm like, you know what? It's great that I can trust you, okay? What about the 20 other competitors you have in this space? Further, why should I trust you? You're taking that vulnerability information and you're using it as a discriminator for your product. And you know what the best discriminator for your product is? I know about more O-Day than the other guy. And once you tell the vendor and you get it patched, that's an O-Day you don't know about anymore because everyone else knows about it and it's not an O-Day, okay? So why would I trust you, okay? There's a business problem here. So what's interesting is the security community is now an industry. Like I always refer to it as a community, which is kind of interesting. And I think it was Al last night that actually mumbled this, so something good did come out of Al's mouth last night. I'll let that kind of settle in for a second. So it's an industry, right? I mean, honest to God, there's billions of dollars in play. Billions and billions. Altruism doesn't pay bills. Like, I consider myself to be pretty damn altruistic, you know, probably to a fault. But there are a lot of kids who are growing up and getting into the security community right now, and they're looking at this kind of tier of people that they look up to and respect, and what are they doing? They're making money by selling their vulnerabilities. They're making bank by perpetuating layered defense and all this other stuff, because it's actually not that difficult, because honestly, like I had in the earlier slide and didn't address, InfoSec, not a science, okay? It's an art at best. And so people are growing up and going, well, my idol is off making a lot of money and he's doing all this stuff. I'm going to do what he's going to do and then I'm going to push the bar farther, right? I'm going to push the bar even farther. That's hard. That's not good for us. So how many people have degrees in information assurance or information security? Anyone? Check, right. How many people have degrees in engineering or computer science? Right, okay, there's a few of us that have that. Bit more of a science, right? Electrical engineering, there's been some changes in the last 30 or 40 years, not a lot. Computer security, there's been a few, right? There's been some subtle changes in the last 30 years. We don't have really realistic models. There's not like a statics and dynamics class that you can take that talks about networking that you can then apply 40 years down the road. Turns out gravity, basically the same thing for our lifetime. Just in case some of us, it feels a little different, but it's the same. No one cares about security like we care about security. We care about security enough that it's 6 o'clock on a Saturday in Cleveland, and we're in a Holiday Inn Select, packed into a room, talking about security. That, by definition, is caring, okay? Like, there's a special place in my heart for everyone in this room. For everyone else, they don't care about security. They care about things like compliance. There's a regulation. There's FISMA. There's Sarbanes-Oxley. There's all this other shit. I care about that. I care about not going to jail. I care about making more money for my shareholders. You know what? That's fantastic. That's what free market economy is all about. And we can debate about libertarians and anarchists and whatever else, but fact of the matter, that's the way the world spins right now. So we got to get over it, okay? No one else is going to make the world more secure, right? There's people who are going to make money off it. There's people that are going to pay money for stuff. And then there's a group of people, sometimes a subset of those, but a lot of other people, who are actually going to try to make the world a more secure place. Okay? That's what you need to think about. When you're out there and you're doing these security things and you're learning and figuring out all these things and working at your job, every once in a while ask yourself the question, am I caring about security? Okay? I'm not saying you got to do it all the time. Because God knows the businesses that exist today don't exist just to pay your frickin' bills when you're a security, staff or consultant or whatever. When I was working at this one big shop one time, we had hundreds of servers and all these data centers and stuff, and our security guys were just zealots. They were like, "Oh, you can't do that. That's insecure. Like, we're going to do that because the business needs it to survive. If the shareholders have the thing of, oh, well, we're going to shut down the business because it's insecure, or we're going to stay alive and be insecure." They're going to pick the one that makes money, I assure you. So we need to understand that, but every once in a while you need to ask yourself the question, hey, am I doing the right thing? I got to keep trucking because I'm already running along in the tooth. Wow, I found like 4 soapboxes already. Secret number 2, you can't train everyone, period, full stop, okay? No offense to the software developers in the room, but you are as smart as you're ever going to be the day you graduated from college, okay? Data structures and algorithms, that hurt your brain like nothing else, okay? And I assure you, everything else you need to do in the world, except for a few people, it's going to be basically any adaptation of all that stuff you learned. Learning new languages, it's just new syntax, right? It's really not that much more complicated. So the people here, we care about security. You might actually learn how to write secure code, how to analyze code, things of that nature. The vast majority of the developer population doesn't care. Okay? If I get it done on time and it makes it through QA, I'm going home and having a beer. That's all I care about, right? And QA doesn't involve security. 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, QA doesn't involve security. So I'll pass QA and it'll be full of BOs and I don't care. Security is everyone's problem, right? I mean, that's the mantra. Like, everyone has to care about security because you should all worry about identity theft and the corporation and all this other nonsense. No. So there was a study, I think GAO released it, Government and Accounting Office or somebody. It was, I think, for the IRS. And it was a release of the information of how well the IRS did when people tried to get social engineered over the phone. And they said, this year, when we had people come in and try to get passwords from our users, only 45% of the users gave out their passwords. Thinking, that is a massive improvement from the 75% from the year before. Obviously, our user education system is working. Holy crap. So, obviously, it only takes one break a lot of times to really compromise the system, right? You get one user to give you the password. I can log in remotely. Now I have access. And then I can just go start robbing and pillaging and causing problems for small animals. But, at the end of the day, you're not going to educate everyone, right? You're never going to get that down to 0. Even if everyone understands and gets it, guess what? They're still going to make mistakes, right? People still make mistakes. In big enterprises, people make a lot of damn mistakes. You can't train them. So what do? We need to arm users with tools that don't require any education whatsoever to use securely, right? And users here are Joe user sending his email and the developer, okay? Our developers need to be armed with languages, compilers, other tools that prevent them from cocking both hammers and aligning their big toe underneath both barrels and pulling the trigger, right? And then breaking their chin in the process, okay? There's a visual for you. We don't have any of that today, right? There's research going on into that. There's a sub-secret here, the super secret ninja secret, okay? We don't learn from the past. Like any other industry on the planet, we don't learn from the past, okay? You go look at all the really interesting .com security things that popped up in the 98, 99, 2000 time. Only a few of them were actually revolutionary. There are a lot of people sinking a lot of money into ideas that had a lot of research done into them already. And we still see that today. And even the ones that were revolutionary with, there was no market for, okay? Zero-knowledge systems, anyone actually buy privacy services from zero-knowledge systems when they were around? Zero-knowledge systems sold access to like a proxy and anonymizing network and a bunch of other services. You load a little client in, and it wiped everything so people couldn't track you on the internet and a bunch of crap. It's like $50 a year. It's a pretty good deal for privacy, right? No one cared enough to pay for it. Or there was an expectation that it should be something that's there already, right? Deer in the headlights, all users are, okay? There was no money in it. So anyway, that was way far afield of the initial ninja secret. The ninja secret is we don't learn from the past, and we need to work on that very, very strongly, okay? There's a lot of academic research that's gone on. I'm going to reference some papers later. Please go read what's happened, okay? Again, gravity hasn't changed. Computer security has, but that doesn't mean it's changed so substantially we can't learn from the 40 or 50 years that's been done before. Secret number 3. So I was sitting around with this guy. His name is Simple Nomad. Simple's a fun guy in the like fungus kind of word. Simple has more pictures of my crotch than any other person on the face of the earth. Simple, he's a graybeard. I mean that literally. He's got a big gray beard, looks a bit like Gandalf. And we were sitting around at Shmookan, and we were chatting away. And I said, you know what? If we had thrown Shmookan in 1998, we would have been flamed off the face of the earth for being a bunch of white hat prick elitists, and our web server would have been owned the moment we opened the con. Period. There would have no confusion. That's the way the industry used to work, right? There was a bunch of chaos, anarchy, and libertarianism, which according to Al are on two opposite sides of the spectrum. I contend it's a big circle and they're at the bottom, but whatever. We can discuss the models of politics later.
We're all just crazy down there.
Exactly. We're all down here in the bottom where all the crud collects. Man, that's a great analogy. But that used to be the whole thing of it, man. Like, you went to DEF CON back in the day, and like people were like making nuclear weapons, and I mean, there's obviously some lore involved. There wasn't that much plutonium, but there was still a lot of crazy stuff that was going on, and people were attacking each other's systems, and this was all like above board. Okay, the computer security industry now has a bit of a feeling like the British versus the French in the early 1700s, where we all politely line up on opposite sides of the field and aim at each other, pull the trigger, and see what happens. Okay, you lost 10, we lost. Okay, we did better on that round. Okay, reload. Okay, fire again. A very polite way of waging war. That's not the way it works, right? We are in an industry where there's a lot of chaos. Some of it's under the surface now. It's not so much on public mailing lists like it used to be, although full disclosure still, you do see little tidbits of this. Someone gets a good treatment from Bandtown and has all kinds of pretty pictures of them posted and their social security number and everything else. Neat, right? Poking a bunch of people in the eye. A whole bunch of security professionals who think it's a kinder, gentler world, and it's not, okay? That's still the way it is. The attackers, the real attackers, organized crime, nation states, you name it, these people don't play nice. When the mafia wants to make money, there's a reason The Sopranos is around. They just dream up like this kind of environment where people kill each other for money. It really happens. And people really hack into computers for money, and they build botnets, and they own your mom's computer and have her credit card number, okay? That's not nice. Shocker, okay? We can't defend it like they are going to play nice. We can't ask them, oh, please stop. And we can't shut down DNS so their bots don't work, right? Like, because my mom's not going to remember the IP address for CNN, I assure you. But this is something to think about, you know? I think the chaos that existed 10 years ago in the security community was good overall for the security of the community. Because we understood, we had internal strife, let alone external strife, so we were always trying to push the bar forward. We don't really see that anymore. And I think you lose a sense of camaraderie and you lose a sense of aggression that you get when you have that. And I think it's important to have that kind of aggression. When you're talking about trying to make things more secure, you can't sit on your thumbs. Speaking of sitting on your thumbs, yesterday was a big day in my life. Not just because it was the first day at Notacon 4, but I had a box that was deployed in Anchorage, Alaska in 2000. FreeBSD 40000315 something or other current. Okay, so anyone that knows anything about FreeBSD, that's a little sketchy to have on the internet these days. This was the primary shmoo mail, web, and DNS server for a goodly long time, and until last night was our primary DNS server. Everything else had been migrated off of it. A single thing had been recompiled or patched on that box in 4.5 years. Okay? The only thing that saved it is every binary in the box was custom compiled when FreeBSD current went from A.out to ELF binaries. Okay, that's a little scary in and of itself. That box was ownable. Totally 100% ownable. And I would tell people, I got in front of Black Hat and DEF CON, said, there's the box, go own it. Nobody owned it. Not to my knowledge. It's entirely possible to like go through it, we'll find something. But it scares me because I had a sense of complacency about a box and I even joked about it. Like, ha ha ha, you can go own this box. In all reality, somebody should have taught me a lesson and popped it, and I would have thanked him for it. And now you can't say you're going to because it's gone, so. Okay, so no, we're back into the sequence of the non-super secret Notacon secrets and just back into the regular ones. So those three were the ones I threw in last night. Again, if you have comments, I'm going to run probably right up into the end of this thing. So if you have comments and you want to like throw stuff at me or whatever, better do it now. Thanks. Yeah, there's a shmoo ball. We brought at least a couple. For those that don't know, at ShmooCon, one thing we do is we arm people with these little squishy balls. The first year they were really too squishy and you couldn't throw them. The second year they were ping pong balls and you couldn't throw them. And the third year they were much more weaponized. They hurt. Somebody had made a gasoline powered shmoo ball launcher and it shot from about me to you, sir. While meanwhile people in the back of the room could throw them hard enough to leave like red marks in your forehead. Anyway, the idea is, as a person in the audience, if you disagree with what someone's saying, but you don't necessarily want to interrupt them or you don't feel strong enough to say, I know exactly what I'm disagreeing with, but I think it might be bullshit, you just throw the thing at them. And that's up to the speaker to figure out, would I say some bullshit? You know, what's the deal? But I encourage you, even if you're at some place where it's not politically correct to throw things at the speaker, think, I'm going to bum rush him afterwards and scare the wits out of him. That'll put some responsibility back in the community post-haste. Security products are becoming obsolete. Like I said, firewalls and IDS is very much geared around a different threat model. At a recent CIO conference, there was a bunch of CIOs from big, like Fortune 50 companies on a panel, and they said, hey, if your firewall and IDS logs went away and you didn't log them anymore, would you actually notice anything? And they all just giggled. Literally giggled like little girls. They're like, no, absolutely. It turns out we don't look at them. Like, we keep them for compliance. If people actually ask, we can say, yep, we sure do log stuff. You know, there's a big checkbox somewhere, and it says audit. And there we go, I got it. Do they use it for anything? Is it important to their business? Absolutely not. Host-based security, kind of the wave of the future. It's wave of the past for some of us. But we really need to care about what happens the hosts, okay? Trying to resurrect what's going on at the network doesn't make any sense, right? If I got transactions flying all over my network and I'm trying to decide what's an attack and what's not, I have to try to resurrect all the business logic that would normally be in play and try to say, is that really, might be an attack. I'll just put an alert in the IDS and someone will look at it, right, and that just disappears again with the audit log of death. Problem manifests itself at the host. So we need to understand the host better than we do today. We don't really have the greatest tools yet to understand that. I used to work at this transaction processing company where we tried to do credit card processing on the internet. I said try because we never actually had a customer. We believed in SET, secure electronic transaction. It's dead, by the way. It died a horrible, horrible death, and we burned VC money with it. But one thing that we did was we ran Sun BSM engines, Sun's basic security module, which is effectively syscall level auditing. You could audit any and all syscalls in the box. For instance, if you wanted to audit every fopen, you could. Neat. We wrote a little statistical analysis engine. The first thing we did, and this will get Al all kinds of excited, is we wrote a neural network to do the analysis. Yay, AI. And it turns out that it didn't work at all. It sucked. So we wrote a statistical analysis engine, and it worked fantastically. And we'll see all kinds of neat things about who was trying to attack us and that kind of thing. But we really only looked at 1 or 2 dimensions of data and didn't try to correlate it. Okay? We didn't spend a lot of money on a huge farm trying to do all this data correlation. You see all these products in the market, we're like, you give me all your data, and our little gnomes will think about it very hard, and we will find the intrusions. No, they don't work. They're very expensive. They're difficult to deploy. I don't mean to say they don't work, but they're difficult to make work. I'm really not trying to make a pitch against or for particular vendors. I'm trying to be as honest as I can. But those systems are very difficult to deploy. You're better off just picking a couple of dimensions, analyzing the hell out of it, and figuring out, hey, is this a bad thing or a good thing? And to make an AI point, again, Al, actually, I'll do it in the next slide, so hold that giggle. SOA. Service-oriented architecture. Does anyone here do SOA, coding, programming, know much about SOA? So SOA is this idea have all these web services that kind of magically speak to each other across some global enterprise, and they assemble themselves into this big amorphous blob of just getting shit done on your behalf. Okay? It is. Yeah. Yeah, well, there are people that will want to shoot me for that should they see the video. SOA is like the wave of the future, man. Like if you go read Computer World and all these things, it's all about SOA. Everyone's migrating. It turns out it takes a lot of effort to migrate it. And the idea here is you could take something like your legacy COBOL application and wrap a big web services wrapper around it and then allow things all over your enterprise to talk to your COBOL and RACF servers and all this stuff through this SSL tunnel, basically, that you've created. Oh, that gets me hot from an attack perspective. It's complicated. It's incredibly complicated. Like you have all these things talking to each other, and you don't necessarily know what's going on. We can't build those things correctly, okay? We can't write tactical code line by line in a secure fashion so that we know we don't have race conditions, so that we know we don't have buffer overflows. How the hell are we supposed to know they have some composability problem where someone can get a whole bunch of information and bypass my access control mechanisms by asking all the right questions to the right agents? Right? How do I know I haven't introduced other flaws, big high-level flaws I don't understand yet because I can't model, I can't simulate this environment? It's psychotic, okay? And we've got vendors out there who are saying, you know what, we'll do XML firewall, okay? Oh, got the word firewall there. So now we've got a more advanced software engineering problem, so we'll put a more advanced network thing in the middle and hope it all works out, okay? Not gonna work out too well because, again, it's a second order kind of thing where I have to reconstruct everything that's going on and then make a decision, is this thing okay? Is this big binary blob here okay? Or is it just really an image or is it an attacker? I don't know. So I'm not a big fan of that. If for no, there's also this subtle problem that everything's encrypted. You know, everything runs over 443. So putting something in the middle will go, yeah, I can't read it. It's sorry, I can't factor big prime numbers in my head that fast. Give me a second. Okay, 6. Not a big prime number, by the way. Okay, so trusted hardware. Zing. Having trusted hardware changes the face of security as we know it. This is not a shock. Okay, what I'm saying here is not a surprise. There are papers dating back to the 60s. There's a really important piece of work. A guy, Butler Lampson, wrote a bunch of papers in the 70s, early 70s. One of them is called Protection. And Protection lays the groundwork for, hey, if I have a little trusted module on a motherboard that I can query all the time and ask questions of, and it holds my cryptographic material, it does my cryptographic operations, and it kind of makes an attestation about the integrity of this. And if I can segregate all the objects in the operating system, I can build a really uber cool secure system without necessarily paying a lot of attention to the quality of the code. Neat. MLS and trusted computing, okay, multi-level security and trusted computing. He put the groundwork down for this in the 70s. It's the holy grail of computer security. How many people know what MLS is? A handful, okay? If you care about computer security and you want to not repeat the failures of the past, go read about MLS. And you find along the side of the road lots of dead bodies that have tried to solve this problem. My analog to this is it's a lot like artificial intelligence. First of all, I'm going to get to it. I'm almost there. What can we do if we have this thing? Well, the first thing I can do is I can have a BIOS that'll ask this trusted module, hey, am I really the BIOS you intended to boot? The trusted module will say, sure, look okay to me. I verified your cryptographic signature. Everything looks all right. We've checked each other out. Go for it. BIOS comes online, says, I'm going to check this kernel out. Picks up the kernel, looks at it, says, I can verify your signature. This is the kernel I intended to boot. Kernel gets online, says, I'm going to bring some drivers online. These are all the drivers I intended to boot, except that one. I can't verify its signature, I'm not going to load it. Same thing with the application. So now I'm booted and I'm running an operating system that has only the kernel, drivers, and applications that I intended to start and nothing more. Wow, okay, so it doesn't mean it's secure, but it does mean it's what I intended to run, okay? It's really hard for botnets to live persistently across reboots if they can't restart themselves. That's the nature of an executable. It has to execute itself, okay? And if you can't execute it, cool. We've succeeded in something. Neato. Microsoft had this problem a few years ago when they started talking about, hey, we're going to have signed drivers and all this kind of nonsense. And everyone said, well, signed doesn't mean secure. No, but it at least means it's what I meant to do, okay? Big forward. Now that we can get into runtime verification and then actually verify in real time, I'm continuing to do what I anticipated I was supposed to be doing. Now we're talking about real security stuff. Okay, so why is this now the time for trusted computing? Okay, just like why was 1996 the big turning point for artificial intelligence? Al's already giggling. So artificial intelligence, the way that we were going to solve AI was symbolic computing. Woohoo! We were going to code symbolically. We're going to build big, weird, random processors and VAXs and things. God bless the VAX. But we're going to build these systems that think like humans because humans think symbolically. And we just put them together in the right way so they think symbolically in the way that we think symbolically. They will rise and become our overlords. And we will all be slaves to the new, whatever. Anyway. So again, some people applaud. Thank God, we need new overlords. There's an election coming up, and if the robots took over, we'd be better off. Best joke of the night so far is a political one. Outstanding. Tough crowd, yeah. It turns out that didn't work, okay? We couldn't solve AI through symbolic computing. What do we solve it through, Al? Nothing. Oh, come on. Imitation. Raw frickin' horsepower. Okay? That's what happened. When Deep Blue or whatever the hell it was beat Kasparov, what had IBM been doing for the years up until? So IBM had this thing where they were trying to beat this grand chess champion. And they kept building these new machines every year that would try to beat them. Were they writing new languages? Were they making it think more like humans? No, they were putting more processors with more memory into the thing and making it think farther ahead until it imitated the humans but didn't think a damn thing like we did. Hey, but you know what? It beat the Grandmaster, right? So, yeah, mumble, bitch. Okay, so. But here's the deal. Like, that was a success story for the artificial intelligence people. And really what it was them changing the rules of the game, okay? We're saying, what we really meant was Moore's Law. I'm sorry, that was the coolest thing ever, not symbolic computing. So, trusted computing was the same kind of thing, like, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to put these big, massive crypto chips, and we're going to solve these problems, we're going to have trusted processors and all this hoo-ha. Well, okay, so let's do a little history lesson, and this is a bit of revisionist history, according to me, because I'm a big Mac zealot. See the big apple there? According to a recent survey, iPods are cooler than beer, right? I think a lot of us have heard this at some college. Anyone actually go to this school? I'm not sure it existed, but iPods were cooler than beer, which... a lot of underage kids there. Well, what made the iPod work? Well, it was sexy and white, and it was kind of fun. But iTunes Music Store, right? Like, this had a lot to do with it, because now, for $1, I could go buy any song I wanted, basically, right? I could go buy In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida for $1 and not buy any of the other songs that were on side B of that Iron Butterfly album, right? Like, everybody knows In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida? Dun, 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 dun. The other side, Are You Happy, for the record, is one song off of the B-side of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, Iron Butterfly. And I'm serious. You can actually double-check that. Yeah, anyway, why did the content providers buy into this? Well, because Apple made a cryptographic construct that allowed them to protect within a reasonable amount the security of their content. So they said, you know what, for $1, that's pretty good, because we're just going to give it to you once. I don't need to press CDs. I don't need to do anything else. You take care of all the distribution. We make money. Check. Got it. In, what was it, March 7, 2 billion songs downloaded from the iTunes Music Store. I would call 2 billion of anything, except maybe like oxygen molecules or anything else you would measure in moles, to be pretty damn impressive. So through transitivity, Apple made DRM cool, okay? DRM, if you go research DRM, digital rights management, all this stuff that controls the content, all it is grumble, bitch about, my God, this is just the man controlling my machine and whatever. Oh, but my iPod. No one, I mean, people don't think about it. People are just happy as a stuffed pig they can download this stuff. So what does that have to do with trusted hardware? Well, Apple pretty much made trusted hardware cool too. This is something really neat that they did. The idea is they went to the Intel processor. Neat study was done a couple years ago regarding how the Mach microkernel executes on G4 PowerPC processors and G5 PowerPC processors versus Intel processors. And everybody who's a Mac used to have this big, well, the IBM PowerPC platform is so much better than the Intel platform. And I was one of them. Like, I swore up and down, oh, these PowerPCs kick the crap out of Intel. And some guy did a study and it says, you know what, it turns out the way the Mach microkernel executes, the PowerPC is potentially the worst architecture you could choose to execute that particular operating system on. And we all went, ha, and it's still faster, so we're still better. You know, we just, again, changed the rules of the game. But Apple eventually ran out of, faith with IBM, sold all their intellectual capital for peanuts or whatever, and they decided to invest their time and efforts into moving to an Intel platform. And Apple was really worried they're going to move to Intel, and then everybody is going to go buy a Dell and load OS 10, okay? Because there's some, I don't know, they feel that OS 10 is like the neatest thing ever, and everyone wants to run it, so they'll buy cheap hardware, and it'll all work out. And they said, well, how can we stop this from happening? How can we keep this core piece of our, the way we operate, if and only if Apple hardware software then do the cool and easy stuff? And if you lose one of those two things, what can we do? So one thing that they had done is they had purchased a product that they ultimately adapted called Rosetta, which does on-the-fly translation from PowerPC opcodes to x86 opcodes. Neat for the CS geeks in the world, I'll repeat. Neat on-the-fly emulation of another. This is what I'm running here, Microsoft PowerPoint, compiled for PowerPC, running on a dual-core Intel box faster than a PC platform. Wow, sexy. They called it Rosetta, and what Rosetta did when it started was verify that there was a TPM, a trusted platform module, this little cryptographic device, basically a smart card on a chip soldered onto the motherboard. It would say, hey, are you there? And CPM would be like, yep, let me check you out. Check its heart rate, bend over, and everything was okay. It would move on, and it would start. Well, clearly, this is a software process, right? Like, we haven't gone through all the trusted boot and everything, so I can still inject something here to say, oh, everything's okay, and get it to continue on. Same thing with the iPod, right? Like, you can un-DRM your music that you buy from iTunes Music Store. How many people do? Handful. How many people do on a regular basis? It's actually a lot more than you see in the general public. In the general public, that number is probably 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 10,000, 1 out of 100,000. We try never to do, right? Al just makes his own music and listens to it. It's a lot of the Kirk V match. He just chanted it in his head, dun, 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 dun. So Apple ensures, through this way that their proprietary software only runs on their hardware. This guy, Maxis, he unleashed the power of the Apple lawyer, and the Apple lawyer came after him, and he then kind of went underground and popped up all the stuff in a different website, and went underground and popped up in a different website. If you search for Maxis now, all you find are a bunch of forums that say, hey, I can't find this code anymore. And then a couple weeks later, oh, and then a day later, oh, I can't find his code anymore. Eventually, Apple realized no one cares about OS X enough to go buy this. So to save $1.50 in the fabrication process, they took the chip back off. But you know what? In the time they did that, they sold a couple million of these critters to some of the most cynical people on the planet, security professionals, right? You go to a security conference, half the people there are using these things. Like, we defy all the standard, like, distribution of who should own these. Like, we own a lot of them. And cool, no one thought twice, all right? DRM, or excuse me, the TPM chips are starting to be deployed in all kinds of systems. They have an incredible impact on how we deal with information security, okay? The problem is we don't have any frickin' way to make the right thing happen from a security perspective. We don't have the building blocks in place to leverage this. So the concern with TPMs right now is that, oh man, the man's gonna control my computer, man. I don't know what to do, man. He's gonna tell me everything. Man. That was my hippie imitation, by the way. I'm a little...
It wasn't really an imitation.
Oh, thank you. I have the hippie tattoo. So the problem is we don't have those core building blocks. So while we're all wrapped around the axle about worrying what other people are going to do, we need to actually be worried about what do we need to do as a community to leverage these trusted platform modules, okay? Dell, IBM, Toshiba are also starting to integrate these capabilities into their laptops and their desktops, okay? Within the next technology refresh cycle, about 3 years, we're going to go from the majority of systems don't have them to the majority of systems do have them, okay? We've got a chicken and egg problem. No one's going to write software that leverages the trusted platform module until the majority of systems have a trusted platform module in them. Conversely, people aren't going to integrate the trusted platform module until the software exists. Well, it turns out the manufacturers think the need is there now. They're integrating it. So now we need to write software. We need to write better firewalls, better security stuff, better operating systems that leverage the TPM before the man gets it. I really got to haul butt because I only got about 3 minutes left. Good Lord. So my PowerPoint, patches have two major uses, right? They make your system more secure and they make them more insecure, okay? As soon as a patch is released, the attackers can instantly start trying to weaponize it. They figure out where's the vulnerability, how can I exploit it, how can I release it in the wild. They can do that in hours, let's say 6. There's been people who've been like, Microsoft Patch Tuesday, 6 hours later, and half a fifth of rum, boom, I'm unconscious, drunk, but there's a weaponized exploit. I'm elite. Most organizations, when they go to deploy the patch, they have to regression test the patch. They have to clear out their QA environment, drop in the patch, test everything, figure out how they're going to deploy it, then actually push it into the enterprise, and then deal with 150 one-offs that they couldn't comprehend that they had to deal with before, right? I work with some organizations where they're like, oh, man, we got so much better at deploying these patches now that Patch Tuesday is here and we can plan for it. So really, how long does it take? And they say, oh, about 2, and I expect the next word to be weeks, and they're like months. But sometimes it's up to 4 months still. Okay, so we'll go with really big window here, okay? Really big window. And it turns out when people have things like Metasploit, God bless it, but tools like Metasploit make it so I can take a weaponized exploit and launch it on things really quickly. Cool. And no one can defend against it, right? Like, if your firewall has a problem, or I'm already in the back because one of your users gave me the password, as soon as one of these things gets taken care of, the exploit's released, it's boom, and I own your entire enterprise. Oops, you never saw it. Oh, unless you're paying the IPS people who had the O-Day information ahead of time because they bought it from the researcher in the first place. Bit of a chin scratcher there. Secret number 5, operational security. I have an entire presentation on this. Microsoft may be your best bet. I hate Linux. There, I've said it. Yeah. You can't actually have any clue what you're going to do tomorrow when you're using Linux, okay? Was anyone surprised when Microsoft released Vista? Okay, it was delayed a bit, and there's some jokes around that. But you know what? The end was loaded with information. They had people in the VAR pipeline. They had people in the big enterprises telling them, this is Vista, this is what it can do. Here's 2 million people beta testing it. It's fantastic. Everybody knew. Who knows when the next kernel is coming out and what's going to be in it? Right. Linus doesn't know, okay? He'll decide tomorrow, I had an omelet, and that means it's kernel day. And he's going to go and release a kernel.
That's not a way to maintain an operating system, because then all the people that have to take that and turn it into a distribution have to deal with 100 people like Linus who are writing the PCM CIA drivers and the frickin', God bless them, the hot plug driver people I'd like to strangle with both my hands. They change hot plug every 6 months because they can't stop pissing on each other. And it drives me crazy. Okay, so Red Hat and everybody just wraps some duct tape around it. There was a study where they looked at all the code Ubuntu integrated into Ubuntu. They said, how much code did you change in the way in? They said, we changed 56% of the packages that we imported into this operating system. Holy cow. So DHS funded a big thing from, not Fortify, but some software security company who looked at a bunch of open source software packages for security vulnerabilities. Great work. Fantastic work. Say what you will about it. People disparage it for various reasons. But when someone like Ubuntu takes it and integrates it in, what does that mean to the previous security work I'd done in that package? I guess I'll reanalyze the source code. That sounds cheap. One last thing, and I'm going to end on this. There's other secrets, but they're not important. I really don't want to step on the next speaker's toes. Microsoft, in the early stages of Vista, in the 64-bit version, they said, guess what? We're going to go back to this thing on the previous slide, and we're going to say we're only going to load signed drivers. We're only going to load the drivers we want to load, okay? Wow. I was excited. I was like, this is a step forward. This is honest-to-God security in the operating system. Symantec and McAfee and that whole crew came forward and said, but you know, it turns out when you do that, we actually can't do what we normally do to intercept all the stuff inside the kernel and everything to figure out what's going on to make your box more secure. So we would appreciate it if you didn't. And you didn't pay any attention to the drivers you loaded, and you loaded them willy-nilly like you always have in the past, so you had these big security vulnerabilities so that we can find them and make them more secure. And Microsoft said, what? And then they said, oh, check this out. We're going to go to the EU, and we're going to say, antitrust, antitrust, and then we're going to have your ass in a sling. And Microsoft said, shit. And they opened it up. They got rid of it. They said, okay, you can just turn a thing, and that's it. No more driver signing needed in 64-bit Windows. So the moral of the story is, for years, we've been having this premise that said, Microsoft can't write secure code. Therefore, I need a bunch of third-party security applications to make the operating system more secure. Now, it's fundamentally changed. Microsoft's core statement is, you know what? We spend more money on security than some third-world countries spend on food, okay? We know how to do security at least reasonably well and start trusting us. Third-party products say, oh, but you know what? We got billions of dollars of market share, and you're this big, massive corporation, and no, you can't because of antitrust. So security decisions are being made on our behalf under the guise of keeping a competitive market space, okay? The market will take care of you. Yes, all the anarchists and libertarians, we will unite. The market will take care of us. Anyway, I appreciate it. It's 7 o'clock, so I need to get off the stage. Thank you very much.